everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm really excited for this conversation. I am Shadley Gray at AMI. I work in partnerships and business development. I'm very excited that we kicked off this webinar series at the beginning of the year to expand on the offerings of the AMI community. For those of you who aren't familiar with AMI, Agency Management Institute is dedicated to elevating small to mid-sized marketing companies through several different avenues and workshops. And the BABA Festival is coming up, the Build a Better Agency Festival, not festival, summit. So that's coming up in May. Definitely check out agencymanagementinstitute.com if you're not that familiar with the things that we do. Shift things over to Jamie now. We were talking just before we went live about the fact that I heard Jamie speaking on Drew's podcast a couple years ago, and I literally paused the podcast to email her and say, "We have to know each other. I'm obsessed with the way your brain works, and I feel like we have a lot in common about how we approach things. And P.S. I need your help with what I'm trying to figure out." And so that's how we met, and we've been friends since. She was the first person that I reached out to when we were launching this webinar series to see if she wanted to be a part of it. She's in the process of getting several certifications that I will let her talk about when I turn things over. So she wasn't available until now, so I'm very excited. I will tell you a little bit more about her, and then we will kick things off. Jamie Roberts is an energetic speaker, workshop facilitator, and coach who provides creative industry professionals across the globe with career resilience and mental wellness support. She's had 20 years of background building and leading teams in both agency and in-house environments. Jamie is excited to bring new ideas, strategies, and tools to internal teams to help them more effectively navigate professional challenges and avoid the stress, anxiety, and burnout cycles that frequently happen in our industry. So I am thrilled to have her here today, and I will turn things over to her now.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And thank you guys for having me. This is super exciting. So today we're going to talk mental health. And we're going to talk specifically about mental health as it relates to baggage that we carry with us that unfortunately dictates some of the decisions that we make in our careers, for our teams, for our organizations, and hopefully we can let some of that shit go. So I'm just going to kick it off here with a small exercise where we all take a very deep breath, inhale for 7 seconds, and exhale. Okay, there we go. Now we can start, right? We just have to clear the space. All right. So I am Jamie Roberts. I specialize in workplace mental wellness for creative industry professionals. I started out mainly coaching creatives, specifically designers. I have a background in graphic design. And what I found was that really didn't cut it when it came to mental wellness, because as we know, mental wellness, there's a lot of group dynamics involved. There's a lot of relationships involved. There's environmental factors. And so I started expanding my business, Rock That Creative Job, to work with people in creative adjacent careers, which includes marketing, which includes accounts, communications, strategy, all the components of either an in-house team or an agency. And over the last 5 years, I have run Rock That Creative Job, and it's been an amazing journey, and I'll take you through a little bit of the background so you can kind of understand where I came from and how I started this, this mental wellness kind of crusade for people in this industry. But I am currently going through a certification process to be a positive psychology practitioner. And that will be done in a couple weeks here, which is very exciting. I'm also getting certified as a stress management advisor specific to workplace stress. And I have a strong focus in neuroplasticity and neurodivergency at work, because we know a lot of creative people are also neurodivergent. So whether you are a creative person doing, the actual creative work, whether you're a creative person in a role that sits alongside the people doing the creative work, this is completely relevant to you. So, and if you want to reach out to me, I just want to throw this out there because I haven't formally put a lot of this out into the world yet. If you want to talk about something after you've gone through this webinar, you're like, okay, this is interesting, just send me an email. All you need to say in the subject line is like, hey, I think we should talk. And I'm happy to follow up with you because I know everyone's busy. And when you think about it later, sometimes it doesn't happen or you overthink what you need to say. So if you want to talk, I'm here. All right. So let's talk about what I focus on because I feel like it's very important to create this divide between what I do and what a therapist does. And this is the number one question that I get. So I wanted to kind of put this up front in the slides so you understand the areas of focus that I can help with and that I am focusing on in my business and the areas that I am not. And what I like to describe to people in advertising is this, the areas that I'm not is like the below the fold, right? Which is the below the website scroll, below the direct mailer fold, all of that that's relevant to marketing. It's like that goes below the fold. So I can help obviously with anything that's workplace related, that's burnout related, passion fatigue. You have team dynamics, the fallout that happens when there's a reorg or restructure, or a change in management. Workplace trauma. Maybe there's a toxic experience, a toxic leader that had to be removed. People who are struggling with ADHD at work as well. I have a pretty strong connection to that because I definitely am a very, I've always been kind of scattered in my life. And as I learn more about ADHD, I think, well, that actually, it resonates. And so I want to dig into strategies to help people be more effective in their jobs. I obviously don't do things like substance abuse, depression, addiction, anything that's traumatic, anything that's ongoing, domestic issues, mental health disorders, childhood trauma. So I like to explain it this way. What I help with is if you are struggling with your boss or someone you work with or your team, and there's a constant dynamic happening there that is not healthy, I can help with that. If you realize that the dynamic that you have at work is also the one that you've had in your family of origin or in your current life personally, that's what I don't help with. So that's something for an actual therapist. So I just want to put this out there because I think, emotional safety is a big part of this and just making sure that you're going to the right person for the help that you need and that you're getting the safe help whenever you need that. So all right, moving on. So a little bit of my background. So I spent 20 years in the industry. Half of it was in agencies, half of it was in in-house teams. I've seen a lot of things. I've done a lot of things. I went back and forth between these two models, specifically because I wanted to understand how to be a better client and then how to be a better manager of the clients. And so bouncing back and forth gave me a lot of insight. And I led and built teams in both environments and climbed the ladder over a period of 20 years. And in 2020, I was senior creative director and head of creative for a large multi-billion-dollar organization that was headquartered here in Portland, Oregon. And so in that time, one of the things that I really enjoyed, and as I moved up in the world, was managing people, helping them figure out how to do their jobs better, how to grow in their roles, how to understand, how to manage teams, the team dynamics, how to work through things like team dysfunction or when there's a layoff. Those types of experiences really kind of were interesting to me, more so than the creative toward the end. It was more about uplifting my team, getting them to do their best work, getting them to feel happy in their jobs. And so it occurred to me that in 2020, when the world kind of blew up, I thought about what I wanted to do next, and I realized that that was really the focus of where I wanted to go. I wanted to kind of expand that, and so I started Rock That Creative Job. I started to do one-on-one coaching with people. And, that time in particular for mental health was an extremely difficult one. And I'm sure a lot of people out there probably had experiences that they could talk about with isolation and having to work from home for the first time, especially if you're in a creative capacity, you feel very kind of vulnerable. You don't really know what's going on. And then, of course, all the things going on in the world, which, things are still going on, right? Like that we can never control. So what I really wanted to do was to provide an outlet for people to understand how to move forward in their careers, how to think about things, how to get kind of the practical guidance. And I embarked upon what I realized this year was a 4-year research project because of the amount of people that I was able to connect with. And the reason I'm showing you this is not to say like, hey, look at all these great things I did, but I want to take you through kind of the ways that I was engaging with people and what I found in terms of like what other people are experiencing in the industry. And I worked with people in all capacities, freelance, in-house, agency, people running their own businesses, whoever needed that help, I was prepared to help them. And so in the beginning, I just started doing one-on-one coaching with people, and I also created a series of, instructional videos. So it was more tactics like, here's how you do this, here's how you do that, here's how to think about interviewing, here's what someone wants to hear from you, here's how to think about promotions or talking to your boss or figuring out how to build a team that's larger that will actually service your client base. And so those were successful, but then I realized I wanted to create a broader scale impact. So then I started giving keynotes in 2022. And this photo is from the BABA Summit in 2022. I did a breakout session there. If you were there, nice to see you again. I talked about creative hiring and how to rethink how you bring people into your organization. So that gave me kind of an outlet, a broader experience of like how people are thinking in terms of, the questions that were asked, and people would come up to me after the talks and just go into more depth about like a roadblock or something that they're stuck on versus like, how do I actually do this tactical thing? What's the skill level required for this? Because we know we can all learn skills, right? There's no shortage of life hacks and skill shares and courses you can take online to up level certain skills. But what people were really getting stuck with was confidence, was the ability to, let go of some emotional patterns that they had, ways that they were thinking about their work environment or their team that maybe weren't successful or didn't evolve with the organization. And so I decided I wanted to bring in experts. So then I started my podcast the end of 2022 to bring in more people who had insight into different things. So, I brought in everyone from therapists to people who are hiring managers in all different capacities to kind of give that window into, okay, this is how, we're thinking about things and help other people with that information. Then in 2023, I started doing workshops, and that was very valuable because what I gained from that was, anytime you do a workshop where people share, you get that research, that data, and the insights I gleaned from that. I started traveling all over the country doing these workshops for different organizations like AIGA, RGD in Canada, and that the value of that and understanding people's sort of mental wellness issues as it related to work helped me figure out, okay, it's not the practical tools. It's really about like what's deeper, right? And so I created a course that was a resume course to help them kind of like get over the practical focus, because what we like to do when we don't know how to deal with our emotions is we like to like learn another tool. We like to just distract ourselves with things that are easy and more tangible because we don't generally know where to go with that emotional baggage that we have. So then I started to do live coaching activations at some large conferences. I held my own mental health workshop here in Portland toward the end of last year. I had live stream office hours, Q&As, so I would get constant feedback. So what I was trying to do was help as many people as I could. And what I got was actually all of this data that showed me that, all of these types of roles people that I was talking to, we all are struggling with the same things. And they're different versions because we're in different environments. So someone, said to me, well, how do you know how to help people? And my response was that, our brains, we all have a human brain, right? And so our brains are predisposed to do different things. So it doesn't matter if you're a creative ops manager or if you're an animator or if you're an account director. We are all going to do certain things. We're all going to have similar emotional patterns. And when you bring in business dynamics, that sometimes makes things difficult. So, over 1,500 coaching sessions, those deep conversations with people in 36 different disciplines, 27 different countries. That was the other thing that was fascinating. It didn't matter where you lived. Everyone struggled with this. I worked with people in Nigeria, same struggles. And so there were a few root cause patterns that emerged. And this is when it became clear to me, okay, we're actually sort of self-sabotaging in little mini ways. And we are not able to get the traction in our work with our teams, in our businesses, in our careers that we want because we're doing these things and we don't see them. And so I started to turn the corner toward getting certified as a positive psychology practitioner because I recognize I need actual science-based research and tools and frameworks to broaden my ability to help people and to layer on top of my experience in the industry and also my experience as a coach. So here's the three ways. These are the three sort of common ways that people tend to sabotage themselves without recognizing it. And you might recognize this as like, oh, maybe I do that, or maybe that's my experience, or like this is someone on my team that seems to be doing these things. The first one is really just, you struggle in your career, whether it's in a job, whether it's getting a job, whether it's trying to get promoted or trying to find the right thing. And you take this long and winding path that is full of distraction because you don't feel that you have the value that you think you should have. And a lot of times we think what makes us successful is experience. And actually it's not, it's mental strength, right? It's understanding how to move past things. And so we kind of get waylaid. We just get on this little switchback course and eventually we might get to the next thing, but it takes so long that our value is degraded slowly in the process. The next thing that people do is they hold on to things. And this is sort of where you get like boxed in, right? And if you've had a toxic work environment, if you have a high stress environment, you might have a lot of anxiety. You might feel bitter about the pressure you're put under, about the things your team is asking you for, if you're a manager, or about the work that your manager is asking you for, if you're on the team. And so you sort of get trapped in this space and you kind of just ping pong around and you never quite get to that next level, which creates more bitterness. And then the third thing, which having done this for several years, I saw people go from career struggle and it was like we'd work together and then they get to this success, like, oh, okay, I got the new job, I got the promotion, I got the client. And then they'd go back. And it was like in that time, I had some people come back a couple times to me and it was the same issues. It was just a different place, a different set of people, a different set of experiences, but the same struggle. So they were just repeating this pattern, which I like to call the arch of sadness, because you kind of go up and then you come down, and then you go up again and then you come down, but it's the same thing over and over. So these are the things that led me to realize I really wanted to focus on helping people with what happens in their brain, because what holds us back is not those tactics and skills and plans that we're constantly like striving to create, right? It's what happens in our mind. And that is the scariest part because sometimes we don't see it. We don't want to see it. And if we do see it, what do we do about it? We don't know. So, let's just keep the work going, right? But we all know that running a successful business, working in a successful business, you have to have that peace of mind that allows you to take the risks that you need to take, to do the work that you need to do in a, maybe more fast-paced way than you would like, right? You need that mental tenacity, that strength. And so this is the area that I'm strongly focused in. And it really revolves around workplace trauma and stress because this is so cumulative. And one of the things that I would always explain to people when we would talk about this in our sessions is that it's like those telephone poles where things are just papered over, papered over, papered over. And so these are your memories, right? Layer upon layer. They're just getting glued together by the elements over time. And we've all seen those things. And you can't, when you stand next to them, when you're waiting across the street, you cannot see anything on them. They're all just kind of like mashed together in this paste, this glue. There's no clarity. You can't read any of the flyers. You can't read any of the type. You don't know what's going on. And so this is what happens in our brains, right? When we're building all these memories, and they can be little micro memories. It doesn't need to be some big traumatic event like you lost your job or you got fired or you had to fire someone or your business sunk so you had to raise it up in a different way. It doesn't need to be something monumental. It can be just these small little thing. It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts, that's the analogy. But this idea that like our brains are just getting this crust, it's cumulative. And I think we don't recognize when, oh, we're carrying that with us and then it's making decisions for us. And I've, seen people time after time just do these things where it's like, intuitively that that's not what you want to do, but you just can't help yourself from doing it again because of this. So Positive psychology really has the power to shift the emotions and behaviors of our brains. And the reason I was drawn to this in particular, and I gave a lot of thought to, do I want to be a therapist? Like, where do I want to help people in a deeper way? And it really didn't make sense because I really loved the business world. I love the creative world. It's all about ideas, it's all about concepts, it's all about, client relationships. And I was very excited about that. And I want to help people in that space because when you feel happy in your job, when you feel excited in your work, you feel excited elsewhere, right? There's positive resonance there. And so I pulled out a few things, and this is more text than I like to put on a slide. It's like a cardinal sin of any graphic designer to just type things out. But, there are a few things here that I think are relevant to this audience in particular, because if you're in an agency style business, you need, people to be generating ideas all the time, right? And whether it's problem solving or it's, new creative ideas for a client pitch, it needs to kind of be flowing very easily. And so, the positive psychology movement, it really gives us the capacity to really take in a lot of new experiences, which we know is the point of inspiration, right? Like we see something and we're like, that's how we can do that. Oh, that would be great for that pitch, or that would be great for that solution that client was looking for. And, it also helps us recover from the difficult experiences. So maybe you didn't get the client. Maybe you didn't get great feedback. Maybe you had to let someone go on your team. Maybe you had to restructure. There's a lot of things that happen that we can't anticipate. We just have to go with them, right? But we don't want to keep papering that telephone pole. So the other thing is it increases curiosity. So our brains, when we do these exercises, these positive psychology exercises, it forces it out of its contracted state. And when it's in a contracted state, nothing happens. No new ideas come. We just want to know what we know and do what we do, and nothing else comes in. And that's why when you're stressed and you're anxious and you're burned out, you don't get any ideas, right? And it doesn't matter what kind of ideas you're required to get in your role, they just don't happen. It's a struggle. It's really hard. And then that just furthers the burnout. So it can also undo lingering negative physiological responses. So like that gut feeling you have every time you go into a meeting with a certain person, or every time you have to lead a team discussion through something that's maybe difficult, maybe it's difficult feedback, maybe it's a change in the scope that, you didn't anticipate. Now the deadline is closer. You get that feeling. There's certain feelings that we all know we have, and we ignore them because we just need to keep the work going. It also enhances problem solving tools, which I talked about earlier, which, it doesn't matter what your job is, like we all have to problem solve for all the things all the time. And then it builds resilience. And that's really what I am very excited to help people with, because that cultivates, new responses to difficult events. It makes your brain not go back to the place that it knows over and over, so that you can't move forward, you can't grow, and you can't feel better. Because really, positive psychology is just about adjusting your brain so that you're happier. And when you're happier, you do better work and your team does better work and things flow and people want to work with you and things just kind of magically work themselves out. And not to get woo woo, but I think, the idea of positive psychology in terms of like manifestation, like a lot of people think, oh, manifestation is just like sitting and wishing for a thing and oh, here it is, like I drew a thing on a piece of paper and then it magically showed up. It really is taking action toward a different reality for yourself. And it's hard to do that if your brain is papered over with all those old memories. So the brain at rest is never quiet. We know this. We know that we're like, okay, that's fine. We had that negative interaction, or we had that issue with a team member that's not pulling their weight. We don't know what to do. Or we needed to figure out the budget because we kind of went over and we told the client a certain thing. And then you're like, okay. And you go home and you lay down. And when you put your head on the pillow, what comes back? The conversation definitely comes back. The experience, your emotion, maybe what you should have said, maybe how you should have approached it, maybe what they said, maybe it hurt your feelings a little bit and you push that down, right? So our neocortex, to get into a little neuroscience here, it's shaped by experiences. And what we think is like, oh, well, we experienced that. We just have to keep, that's just in there. But change is always the rule. It's always looking for different influences. And so if we can influence it differently, that actually rewires the neural circuitry in our brain. So if we're experiencing the same things over and over, we're just papering that pole, that's what it's going to look like. It's going to be crusty, it's going to be unclear, it's going to be heavy, and we're going to just drag it with us. But if we can influence it in different ways, that actually changes how we see things in the future, because the brain is not like Chat GPT. We don't have a series of content that we're pulling from. We're just sort of looking at the new experience and we're relating it back to, okay, well, this is that, and that is this, and this is how I do that, and this is what that person says. We're not actually giving it new information. And so what we want to make sure we do is we're giving it that inspiration, the point at which where we see things differently. So neuroplasticity is not actually building physical structures in the brain. And a lot of people talk about, like building new neural pathways and like it's a deep groove and you got to run a deep groove next to it. And, you've probably heard those things. I've heard them too. And I've read a lot about this, obviously, in my certification course over the last several months. And what it is actually a matter of changing the pattern recognition as we learn and experience new things. So you can have the same experience over and over. It doesn't mean you have the same response. And that's neuroplasticity. So the ability to change your brain. And this is, William James wrote a book on this over 100 years ago. I think it was like 1890. So the idea that our brains can change, that was out there, but it's like, well, how do we do that? And so now we're kind of understanding the neural circuitry. And this image actually is an MRI image of the neocortex neural pathways, which I thought was fascinating because it kind of looks like weaving. It also sort of looks like my brand colors. I was like, this is great. Like, this is like a designer's dream that like our brains actually look like this. So, so we're going to do an exercise that I think, and I hope will give you some value today, because I want there to be a point where you see something differently so that you can let it go. And one of those pieces of paper that's on the pole, maybe that comes off, right? And we're starting to get rid of those. We're starting to lighten it up. Because, we can all go through these experiences, with a better understanding of ourselves. And the moment we stop dragging this baggage and making these decisions from like old emotional wounds or patterns, that's when our work experiences improve. And that's when the experiences of people around us improve. And you might be a highly positive person. I'm definitely an energetic, positive person, but the way my brain works or the way it thinks about certain things, that's in relation to the past. I still have the paper on the pole in certain areas, and we all do. So what I'd love to do, and I want this to feel like a safe exercise for everyone. So what I'd love to do is have everyone, if you have a pen and a piece of paper somewhere near you, you can type, but writing tends to be better. If you can write on the piece of paper, just number 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's a 4-step process to rewiring your brain in relation to something. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these, and we're going to give about 2 to 3 minutes for you to write, and just write as much as you can, because what happens when you writing is a left brain exercise. Even though creative writers, it's like you're using your right brain, you're using the creative, innovative side, but it's a sequential exercise. And so when you write, you actually activate the logic portion of your brain, and you leave behind the emotional portion. So you're able to see things differently with the act of writing. And typing is similar, but writing is a little bit more effective. So step 1, and I want to put it out there that I'd love if anyone wants to share this. Like Shadley and I have already talked that we can talk about things, but I want it to be safe. I don't want you to feel like you have to come up with something that isn't effective for you, isn't meaningful for you, because you have to share and you're afraid to share with the group. Do whatever you think makes sense for you in this moment. So choosing a negative or a recent negative events or experience, you don't need to necessarily choose something that is like recent in terms of like this happened last week or last month. It could be recent in your career. It could be like 2 years ago. And it should be something that you're still carrying with you. It should be something that you kind of think about every now and again, or it might come up when you experience something similar to it, right? Something where you felt like, I wish that had gone better. I wish I was, a little more equipped to handle it, or like I feel really frustrated by that. That kind of left me with a little bit of a scar. And in step one, you want to articulate what happened, just logically. This happened. I said this. This person said this. This thing occurred, and state the consequences. And the consequences are how you felt, what happened in your world as a result of that, and anything else that had kind of like that ricochet effect, right, of that experience, because there's almost always an effect that it has, whether it's personally and emotionally or it's broader in your team and in your business. There's a consequence there, and that's why we carry these things with us, because we feel like, okay, it did something to us and it changed us, right? So I would love to give everyone 3 minutes, and I'm going to set a timer. And then if you want to write, come up with that negative experience. And again, it can be small, it can be big, it doesn't matter. It should be something that you feel like bothers you. And it can be a subtle bother, but like when you lay your head down, or when you see that person, or when you experience that same thing, you're like, I kind of just have a little, PTSD because of that thing. So I'm going to set the timer for 3 minutes, and we'll go to part two after that.
Are you writing down something yourself,
I
Jamie?
am.
Doing your own
I am.
exercise?
Hmm.
I, I have.
Yes, I got to grab my paper actually.
We had an earlier podcast or a webinar, actually the first one that we did, which did something similar with an exercise, and I felt like I needed to incorporate game show music so people would kind of have their like, kind of just something to fill the. It can be silence can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes, and you're like, oh,
It can. It can.
completely left with my thoughts.
You're left with your thoughts, but that is part of the point.
Yeah. And I guess to clarify for the viewers and listeners, you're be asked to share if you want to, but the
Yeah.
exercise is really on the paper. So you're just
Yes.
learning the tools. We're not going to randomly call on someone and say,
No.
"Tell us your dark secret.
No.
Tell
No.
us,
Yeah.
tell us your big challenge."
Yeah.
We were
No. If you.
joking, and we were joking earlier that maybe someone else is on this, and you're like,
Yeah. Right.
okay.
Like, oh, this person next to me is the person that I'm writing about. Like, write about them if it's bothering you, but you don't need to share it. We're
Yeah,
not trying to call people out. That's the
yeah.
opposite of mental health. So
Yeah, it's really just about being introduced to a thought exercise as you're trying to process some of these things on your own and
yeah.
just thinking about things. Rethink your thinking is a catchphrase I use a lot as far as
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
have to think about something differently. It
Right.
feels lots of times things feel like facts when instead
Mhm.
they're perceptions. So
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Okay. We have 45 seconds. Okay. All right. Okay. So the next step is list the coping strategies you used during this experience. And it is okay if these were not effective. This literally could be like, I went and cried in my car, or I went home and I, like vented to my spouse, or I ate an entire bag of Cheetos in one sitting, whatever it is, right? Or maybe you didn't use any coping strategies. Maybe you just pulled through and you just pushed it down, right? That's also a coping strategy, right? That's what we sometimes like to do. It's like just push it down, do more work, throw yourself into something else. So we'll have about 2 minutes for this one.
I'm a big fan of screaming into a pillow. That's one of my kind of defaults. You can actually order from Amazon a pillow that says "Scream Here." And I was like, oh, that's hilarious. Like I ordered it for someone
Oh my
um, that I used to work with, and it was a very appropriate gift. Like,
God. Yeah.
so, um,
Yeah.
we did
Exactly.
get a comment. Michelle Jones said she's an avoider. So, I mean, um,
Yeah.
it's
That's super common, right? And that's it creeps up on you.
mm,
For sure. And the thing is screaming, you know, this like the idea behind positive psychology is not to avoid it's not to avoid things. It's not to pretend you don't have negative thoughts or to just push those down and try and replace them. It's like that's not what it is. It's actual rewiring of the brain, of that neural circuitry. And this activity, they use this for people who have experienced like intense traumatic like situations, military PTSD, all different types of things that are very serious mental health crisis points. And
right.
so I feel like if people can do that, then we can absolutely do this about our work, right?
Yeah.
Which can be super emotional. I mean, let's
Mhm.
be real, like it's business, but there's a lot of dynamics there that
Right.
we want to be healthy when we're doing this. And sometimes it's hard. Stress
Mhm.
makes us, emotionally fragile.
Yeah. And positive psychology is not necessarily like just think happy thoughts.
No.
Decide to be happy. It's like, no, it's just to frame that. I think that a lot of people, when they
Yeah.
hear it, it feels very like happiness is a choice. And it's like, oh, God, it's not about just like
Yeah.
painting a smile on a time bomb. It's like,
No,
well,
it's,
just,
yeah, it's not toxic positivity. It's not
right. Yeah.
being maniacally happy. Like
Mhm.
that's not real. It's not lasting.
Right.
Okay. So now the next step is list the resources and strategies you would use if you had a do-over. And this can be, now that I see that this had this effect, or, maybe I would have done it this way. Even if you're not someone, even if you are an avoider, even if you're not someone who's like, I'm going to be, direct with this person, just knowing that like you feel like that was a thing that maybe you should have done. Maybe you're not ready to do that. Maybe that's not your personality, but recognizing, okay, I could probably do this differently, or I could have done that differently, or there could have been a different outcome there, right? It's really about understanding your role and getting that do-over in your head. So we're gonna do 2 minutes on this one. Do 40 seconds left and my pen just ran out.
Do you have examples of strategies?
I mean, it could be that you ask someone that you know, right? That
Mhm.
you maybe talk to someone prior. Maybe you share the stress with someone, because a lot of times we keep the stress inside and it kind of consumes us, right? You know, you are able to convey your concern to someone that is in that conversation with you, or, maybe you just did something that you feel like maybe I just handled that the wrong way. Maybe it's just on you. Maybe it's a solo experience and you realize, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that.
Mm.
There we go. Okay. But it's really whatever you feel like you could have improved on. It doesn't need to be like a technical strategy, like some sort of psychology
Yeah.
framework. It really is about how you think could have done it differently. And so this is really kind of the culmination of it. So what we want to do is we want to look at these things. We want to list the lessons, the growth, the silver lining, the gift in the mistake, and state anything you appreciate as the result. The goal is to claim your learning, right? So it's not about what happened. It's not about how you acted, how someone else acted, what you did or didn't do. It's really about seeing it from the outside and recognizing, okay, yeah. So I guess I know now that this should have happened. Or I guess I know now that, I realized that like that actually was probably okay because, it created a space for me to, take on another client or whatever it is. But listing things you appreciate, it really changes the way your brain responds and connects to an experience. And claiming that learning opens up the growth pathways, right? And that's the neural circuitry that we need to change. So I'm going to give 2 more minutes for this one. All right. And hopefully you guys have pens and paper. I feel like that's
Mhm.
not unless you're a designer and you have a sketchbook, sometimes that's just not a thing we have.
I appreciate that you underlined appreciate. That's because I think, like
Yeah.
a lot of times the lessons feel brutal, or
Hmm.
it's like a lesson I didn't want to learn, or why did I have to learn it that way? And then you can beat yourself up in that. You can,
Yes.
there's an interesting Anne Lamott. Do you know who she is? She's
Hmm.
a spiritual writer and she's fantastic. And she talks about when her mother was in hospice and that they felt like they were getting everything wrong. And,
Mm,
and the nurse was like, How could you know? You couldn't know until you knew, until you were
exactly.
doing. It goes to the larger, you know, do the best you can while you're learning. And then
Yeah.
once you learn,
Yeah.
do something with the lesson. And so I
Right.
think that
Right.
it's easy when you feel like things I wish I had done that, handled that differently, which this
Hmm.
exercise is a little bit of because you are like exploring like maybe what would I do differently in the future makes you reflect on what you got wrong, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
um
Absolutely.
it can
Yeah.
be um it can feel like you're beating yourself up because you did something wrong instead of like, I know I want to learn from this. I want to like appreciate. I mean, it
Yes.
can be kind of sometimes it's funny if you're like, wow, I really handled that like an idiot. Like that is
Yeah.
giving yourself grace to learn and to move
Right.
forward and
Right.
kind of step into the learning. So,
Yeah, and I think this is increasingly harder in business because there's it's all interconnected, right? There's people that are counting on you, whether it's your clients or your teams, business partners, and you have to deliver things. You don't have the time to be like, let me do a post-mortem on everything I've ever done. Like
right.
there's no space for that. And that's why I feel so compelled to help people with these little small strategies that they can weave in, right? You can do this with your team. You can do this with someone that you work with your partner, with the people that you work side by side with every day. like just to help unpack something like, okay, how do we change our relationship to this thing that wasn't great and maybe we didn't do as good of a job as we thought and we're going to beat ourselves up over it unless we change that connection point to it, right? And that's the neuroplasticity. So I would love if anyone out there, and Chadley and I, we talked about, sharing if no one else wants to share, but I want to give an opportunity if there's
Yeah,
anyone that
sure.
is raising a hand out there. And don't feel compelled to.
And the
Totally
question,
fine.
what is the direct question? The question is who wants to share what their challenge was and how
Yeah.
the exercise went for them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so as we're waiting to see if anyone pops in, I will just talk a little bit about mine was the
Mhm.
um, idea or that a conversation when I had to fire a client. Um,
Mhm.
I am I work part-time as a ghostwriter for business books, and it was my third client. And that goes back to your slide earlier about imposter syndrome because I was still
Mhm.
trying to build this, trying to figure out if I could do this, and it felt like I had to follow the client wherever they took me, regardless
Mhm.
of the agreement. And
Mhm.
so um, realizing, and what ended up happening was that they ghosted me for 9 months and then came back and said, "We're ready to pick up where we left off." I was like, and I had literally been
Oh,
emailing and trying to get things moving, and they, and I had to make the decision of whether or not I was going to continue with the book in order to get another one under my belt and to not
yeah.
burn that bridge. And
Yeah.
I had to make the decision to step away from that project and tell them
Yeah.
no.
Right.
So that is the one that I used for the exercise that I've been thinking about as far as the way I processed that. I still think about that because it was the first time that I
Yeah.
had made that stand for myself that felt very not ego driven, but very, I had to be
Yeah.
confident in order to walk away.
And
And
so what do you appreciate about that?
it really informed how I set up the next job and the clarity that I needed to bring to
Right.
the conversation for next clients and the way that my contract was written. And
Mhm.
so that it's like, let's be clear on deliverables and timelines and
Yeah.
all of that. That was really
Yeah. Yeah.
pivotal.
And the thing is, we can beat ourselves up over this, right? You could have said, I don't know how to do this. I'm not good at this. I really struggle with this. This is just a thing that, I don't know how to manage these things. I'm maybe not good enough to know this, right? Like we come up with all these ways to kind of sabotage our growth.
Right.
But thinking through this in this kind of an exercise, it really helps us understand, okay, yeah, actually, we could have done better. Okay. We
Mhm.
did grow as a result. And, we're going to improve next time. And that is what life is. Right? Like we don't know it until we know it. And then it's like, oh, that's why the
Yeah.
hindsight is 2020 thing is so accurate, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So if anyone else wants to jump in, you are welcome to type into the chat or you can
Yeah.
unmute and join the conversation. Um, just to
Yeah.
share
It's
how,
hard. It's hard in these groups. I've done this in like in rooms, with groups of people. We're
yeah,
all together, all facing each other. It's hard to just be like, let me share my vulnerabilities with a bunch of people that I don't see every day, like
yeah, yeah.
so I understand that, but it generally works really well, especially with people who work together.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm really excited to kind of bring these things in because we do need the tools to be able to create that resilience. And
Right,
um, I'll just advance to the next slide. So placing a negative event into a story timeline, which is what we just did, it rewires that neural circuitry because we're less caught up in the emotions and it allows to see us to see that positive growth. So what this does is it places it in your big story as a human, right? It's not like the defining event. And that's why they use this for people who have maybe had like have been assaulted or have had some sort of horrible trauma in their life or in their childhood and they feel like that consumes them and then that defines them. And if you place it into the timeline alongside all the other things before and after it, it gives it less weight, but it also creates that kind of positive growth that like, oh, well, I did grow after that. Like I can see the after now,
I just want
there's
to
not, it's not,
interrupt for just
oh, go ahead.
Michelle Jones
Oh yeah.
said that her lesson is grace for myself while learning new habits. So that's
Yeah.
just want to
Yeah,
acknowledge.
I love that. I love that. And like we don't give ourselves grace. Like I said, the pace of business is sometimes ruthless, right? And we're not able to do that. And the more we can do that, the more we can do that for our teams, the more they can do that for one another. And then they can withstand, client feedback, scope changes, frustrating experiences, reorganizations, whatever it is that comes up where you're like, okay, this is an intense moment for us, right? Together. And they can support each other too. And that's a huge piece. And high performing teams tend to do that, right? Without the manager being like, what did we learn?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
don't
And I
want
want
that.
to say also that Dana Johnston had a few minutes ago said that journaling like this at the end of every workday helps us disconnect and leave our problems behind.
It does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's that left brain, right brain, right? Sometimes when you write, it's like amazing what comes out because again, the logic brain is engaged. So it's like there is an emotion, but sometimes the emotion is like, oh, that's really how I feel. Oh, right? And journaling is a big piece of positive psychology. It's putting that in your story, right? That's what journaling is. It's like, this is today's story. This isn't the definition of my life or how I exist or my abilities and skills in my career. This is just what happened today. And that's going to be different and it's going to be better tomorrow, right? Um, so this is my final thought because we all focus on productivity and there's all these productivity hacks and like, oh, add more to your day, do more AI, like everything is like do it faster, bigger, better, faster, more all the time. But it's really a byproduct of increasing your happiness by being more in control of your mind. Because the more in control of our minds we are, the easier it is it's to get new ideas, to be able to be resilient and deal with problems and problem solve for our teams and just go with the flow of, the economy, whatever's happening in the world is like, okay, how do we deal with this? If we're in control of our mind and we're not, trying to just add more to that paper pole that's just crusted over, that's not very productive. Like that, just the look of that thing, it's not, right? Like it's the opposite. It's like static and heavy. And so we all want productivity for ourselves. We want it for our businesses. We want it for our teams. And being in control of our mind is really the way to get it. So this is why I am, doing these certification courses and really going deep into this realm because I want to make sure I have the science-based research to help people in a way that actually is going to have value and impact with broader organizations and individuals in their day-to-day. So thank you so much. Again, if you want to contact me, here's the info. Would love to chat with you if you are struggling with anything with your team. And thanks so much, Shadley, for asking me to do this. It's so great to be able to bring this kind of content and these strategies and tools to people.
Yes, I love these kinds of conversations. So I was thrilled when you were available. And I appreciate everything you're doing and learning and the way that you're challenging us to be kinder to ourselves. I think it's fantastic. So congratulations on this new chapter you're diving into. I look forward to seeing how it all comes together.
Thank you.
To everyone else, we will be back in 2 weeks with another webinar. You can check out the AMI, I think they're on the AMI website. I know that they come in Drew's newsletter every Wednesday. So everyone have a fantastic day and thanks again. And we will see you in a couple weeks. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.